Why are Balkan athletes so dominant in sports? Well, today we're going to talk about that and dissect exactly how successful and dominant Balkan athletes are from where they come from. In this video, we're going to be mainly focusing on the former Yugoslavia countries such as Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia, and Montenegro. So, Balkan athletes are known for being very competitive and they always want to win. They hate losing more than they love winning, and I've seen it with my own eyes watching sports basically, past 20, 22 years of my life. And, Balkan athletes have a fire lit up under them every single time they go out and play their respective sports, whether it be basketball, soccer, tennis, handball, water polo, whatever you can think of. They are extremely competitive and they want to win at any cost. Obviously, doing it morally and trying to win that way. But notable athletes such as, a little bias here, so I'll start off with the Bosnians: Edin, Džeko, Miralem Pjanic in soccer. Let's go to basketball for Bosnian players. We'll go with Yusuf Nurkic, Jaran Musa, Mirza Teletovic, Mirza Delibašić. So many great players coming from that region of the world, and we're going to get into more players and how dominant they were and why they were so dominant in this video. So, how does such a small, turbulent region produce world-class athletes and world-class talents? Well, honestly, in my opinion, I think it comes down to the region they grew up in, obviously, and maybe they didn't have as much and they had to do with what they had. So, if you were a basketball player, you would just go out and play basketball every single day. If you were a soccer player, you'd be out on the field every single day. And, there was no other option but to play sports. You wanted to become, a famous professional soccer player or basketball player, and you would do it at any cost. And especially from, the past generations coming from the world war torn countries, Bosnia, Serbia, Croatia, uh, that was, probably the hardest times of people's lives in that area, in that era, and then in that generation. And so I know a story of Edin Džeko. When he was growing up during the war, he would go out and play, soccer with his friends, and the war was going on, which is crazy. So that right there tells you that kids would train or play at any cost, because they love the sport so much, and they will do absolutely anything to get to that highest level of sport. So, like I just mentioned, a lot of Balkan athletes grew up during the Balkan Wars in the mid 90s and the early 90s, and a lot of resilience and grit was built up during those times. Because, if you're going through that part of your life, which is the hardest part of your life, then a big match or a final, doesn't feel as much pressure when you're playing. And also, they grew up with these, crack gyms, old gyms, torn up soccer fields, and how can they not be great when they come from such adversity? And then you go up to play in your sport, and it doesn't seem as hard uh, as as when the war was going on. So a lot of respect to those athletes that grew up in that area, that in that era, and I watched them a lot while I was growing up, teenager, and even in my early 20s. And it was a true joy to watch those players play and perform, because they really played at the highest level and they play their hearts out every single game. Sports are a core identity in the Balkans. Obviously, there is a deep sports culture in the Balkans in all of those former Yugoslavia countries, and a lot of great athletes have come from there, such as you have Dražen Petrovic, Dejan Savicevic, Novak Djokovic, current player, and Luka Modrić, who have inspired generations and generations of young kids to go out there and make something of themselves and really give yourself a chance to become something in life. And a lot of athletes have done that, and a lot of kids are growing up now watching these athletes, current day athletes and former Balkan athletes, back in their day when they played. Coaches in the Balkans are known for being strict, focused on fundamentals, and disciplined. In the Balkans, in Europe, players are forced to learn team play, passing, and IQ before flashiness. Soccer players learn, on the other hand, vision, endurance, and adaptability. This is why players like Nikola Jokić, Luka Dončić excel in their field of play. Their fundamentals are absolutely flawless. And then we, of course, have the physical and genetic aspects of athletes determining if they will become successful and at the professional level in their later years of life. The Balkans sit at a crossroads of Europe and Asia, with centuries of mixing different ethnic groups. So this naturally produced a different range of body types for basketball players, which would be tall and strong for basketball slash handball, and lean and agile for soccer players. It obviously gives them an edge across multiple disciplines, and that is why, that could be a reason to why they're so successful in their sports. And genetically, again, it plays a big role if you're going to be a professional athlete. Luck plays into it, obviously, sometimes, because not every single person is gonna become a professional athlete from the Balkans. It is rare to become a professional athlete as it is, but from the Balkans, they continue to produce these world class athletes in sports, and it's truly a beauty and a treat to see how players are still coming up in basketball and soccer and water polo, in handball, in MMA. There's a plethora of athletes that are going to come in the coming generations, and I'm really excited to see it. Now, imagine if Yugoslavia was still around today. I know that a lot of people think about this sometimes. If we were still together, we would be the best at this, we would be the best at that. But the reality is, we're not together anymore. But I do just want to briefly talk about, if we were still together, how dominant we would be in absolutely every sport. I think we would be the best in, obviously, soccer and basketball. Soccer notably, we have great players that come from our region. We have, talk about this generation. Uh, we have Dusan Vlahovic, we have Dusan Tadic, we have Ivan Perisic, we have Luka Modrić, we have Edin Džeko, we have, obviously, he was born in Sweden, but his dad is a Bosnian and his mom is Croatian. We have Zlatan Ibrahimovic, one of the best strikers to ever play the game. We have great defenders. We have great midfielders. We would be so good in every sport that we play. In basketball, we would have, obviously, the Don, Luka Magic, Luka Dončić. We would have Yusuf Nurkic. We would have Nikola Jokić. You know, we would have so many great players, uh, and I think we'd be unstoppable, because Yugoslavia back in the day, when we were still together, we were very, very dominant in basketball and in soccer. So it's a shame that it's not the way it is today. But hey, like, we still have to enjoy the athletes that we have today, and uh, support them. Support them, and it doesn't matter if you're Bosnian, Croatian, or Serbian, or Macedonian, or Slovenian, or Montenegrin. Still, um, they're human beings, and we should support them in their sports. Obviously, if you like basketball or if you like soccer more, I always say, it doesn't matter, what nationality you are. It's sport at the end of the day, and I love sport, and I support every athlete that comes across my feed. Sports are great, and I love sports. So let's talk about national pride and motivation. For small nations, international success is a huge pride. For small nations, international success in sports is a huge source of pride. Athletes see themselves as carrying their nation on their back. I'll give you guys an example. Bosnia has only qualified for the World Cup once, and that was in 2014. I mean, when we qualified for that World Cup, it meant the world to every single Bosnian person on earth, because the World Cup is obviously the highest level of soccer, and you want to make that competition as much as you can. And I tell you, when we qualified for the World Cup, it was like it became like a national holiday, in a sense. And I will never forget that day. I was watching with a lot of older men at that time. I was like 16 maybe at that time. Yeah, it was truly a special moment for when we qualified for the World Cup, and it meant more. It meant so much more for your country than these players playing for their clubs, which is great. But playing for your country, it is a different feeling, and truly a huge win in our country's history for soccer. Obviously, for a lot of Balkan athletes, their goal is to play in global leagues. So, a lot of Balkan athletes play in the NBA, Serie A, Premier League, Euro League. They play in the Eredivisie. They play in all different leagues in the world, in the League 1, in every other league but their own countries, unfortunately, because Serbia and Croatia have decent domestic leagues, but overall they're not the best. Which is why you see these players transfer to huge clubs across Europe, across the top five leagues in Europe. So that sharpens their skills and it gets them ready for their national teams when they're on international break, and when you have the Euro qualifiers, when they have the World Cup qualifiers, when they have Euro basketball qualifiers. They're ready and they're really ready to show people that they are great and they want to put their countries on the map. So, in short, to end this video, hardship gave them resilience, culture gave them passion, coaching gave them fundamentals, genetics gave them range, and pride gave them drive. That mix right there is exactly why the Balkans keep producing legends and why it will continue to keep producing world class athletes and legends in respective sports. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Sports is one of my favorite topics to talk about by far. And if you did like this video, please smash that like button. It would help me out a lot. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel as this is geared to a larger audience. So I would really appreciate that. I will see you guys next time. Peace.